Welcome to Legendary Physique. I'm Richard Baldwin, your host, and I'm with Jerry Brainum to talk about his September issue of Applied Metabolics. Jerry, I mean, the July and August were so great. I don't know how you could top those. I mean, you
Oh,
had
yeah.
that great one on Vince Gironda in the July thing, and then
Did you
in the
like?
August one, that thing on the diet drinks
Right,
and whether it makes you fat or not was great.
right,
I said absolutely not, and you explained how it can cause hunger, but there's no calories. So because I drink them all the time, and I've never had a problem losing weight or whatever. But anyway,
right.
that explained that stuff. And then you also had does insulin make you fat, and an article on branched chain amino acids, which I thought was very interesting. But if they want
Right,
to know what it says, they're going to have to apply to your newsletter. So
right.
let's talk about what's coming up here.
Okay, well, in keeping with with that philosophy that you were just basically talking about, I don't really I try and kind of handle the off the road type of topics rather than write about the same stuff that you'll find on internet blogs and in the magazines, whatever magazines still remain. I try and write about stuff that would be of practical use to readers, but material that they won't find in other sources, but is very useful. In other words, I'm not just trying to like show people how smart I am. So in keeping with that thought, in the September issue, I was looking at some of these, some of these female athletes. I don't know if you know this controversy. Some of these female athletes tend to be very androgynous. I mean, and there's been speculation that they're men. And then I thought about, female bodybuilding and all that. And, there's a lot of misconceptions about women and steroids. There's been a lot written about men and steroids. So I figured let's handle the distaff side. So I decided to
Okay.
write the whole truth about women and steroids. In other words, how it really affects them, and and then I kind of went into a little bit of simple chemistry about and the steroids, anabolic steroids, and the physiology of how it affects women, and then I went into the controversy about testosterone levels in women. In other words, what about these women with naturally high testosterone levels? I mean, if it's high enough, it's going to make you like a man, but the thing is, will it help you in athletic competition? I mean, is it really an advantage? And so I go into that. So this is a kind of interesting article. Of course, it's especially interesting to women who are contemplating competing in any kind of sport or bodybuilding or fitness or even bikini, because all of this affects body composition. So
Yeah.
that's the first one. And then I came across this kind of a sugar. I mentioned this in the last time we spoke. I came across this interesting research about a natural sugar, not an artificial sweetener. It's a natural sugar that not only doesn't make you fat, it's 70% as sweet as table sugar, right? But not only does it not make you fat, but if you take it, it will actually help you oxidize fat after a meal. I mean, this is really interesting. I mean,
Yeah.
and I said to myself, this stuff, people need to know about this stuff. This stuff probably will be a big thing. And then I had to do some research to find any possible side effects, because it sounds almost too good to be true. A
Absolutely.
sugar that not only doesn't make fat, but helps to burn fat. Now, come on. This sugar actually, hard to believe. I know it sounds almost like it's hyperbole. This sugar will probably burn more fat, help you burn more fat than most of these so-called fat-burning supplements, And so I wrote about the sugar. I have a whole article explaining all the details. Everybody needs to know about it. It's just starting to show up now in a couple of those those protein bars. There's one or two
Uh-huh.
companies that but it's not really in the commercial market yet. Right now, it's being used kind of industrial uses and all that stuff. Food processing. It's not
Huh.
available. NutraSweet or sucralose is not yet, but it probably will. So this is a good article to prepare people for this stuff, so they'll know ahead what to expect from this stuff.
And they've
It,
done double-blind studies on its effect
oh yeah,
on the human beings and everything.
that's the good part. I
I
found a
assume
couple.
they did, or they wouldn't even be in the processed foods.
Well, yeah. Oh, yeah. No,
Yeah.
no. Actually, when I first did the research, I was a little chagrined to find that most of it seemed to be animal research. And I said, you know what? I can't write about this crap. If it's only rodent studies, I am not going to write about it. Because, my philosophy about animal studies is that, and any scientist will agree, they're preliminary. In other words, about 50% of them are transferable to human physiology, but you can't take a rodent study like I see in these blogs online where, they give a rat a certain amount of Winstrol, And then the headline on the blog says, Winstrol produces 46% more muscle mass. And then you read it and you find the whole study involved rats. Now, rats don't respond the same way as humans. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I try and avoid that stuff. But in doing the research for this stuff, luckily, I came across some very recent. In fact, I found a brand new study that involved only human subjects that basically confirm its effects in animals. So this stuff is for real. That made me write the article. Then
thank goodness we have you to do all this research for us.
Really, seriously, I'm telling you.
That's why I love your newsletter.
Yeah, but then I came across another study where
Mm-hmm.
we talked about in the past sarcopenia. Mm-hmm. I mean, we all go through it. It's the loss of muscle with age. Yeah. We all experience it. It's usually it's most noticeable in the legs first. The old cliche, the legs go first. Yeah. There's a truth to that in physiology. Of course, if you work out and you eat well, like you're a perfect example of this, you can keep a surprisingly amount of muscle as you age. I mean, this is the truth.
Yeah, it's getting harder and harder though.
It is hard. Don't get me. It's not easy.
I've still got some left, but
you got the bicep. And I saw you still have a lot of your muscle.
Yeah.
I mean, how many guys your age? And I mean this in a good way. In a way, you're a freak because there's not many people. Most guys your age, I mean, to them, an accomplishment is getting up out of a freaking chair and walking across the room. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So, you can't. Working out, good nutrition, that's one of the main things to keep your muscle. But there's certain supplements that they've been pushing as to actually help, will aid you in this quest to keep muscle as you age or get past 40. Because most of the stuff, actually, the major loss of muscle, it's 3% per decade after age 60. I mean, I'm sorry, 3% per year. In other words, you lose 3% of your muscle mass each year past the age of 60 if you do nothing about it. That's the key. If you do nothing about it. Now, imagine by the time you're 70, you're pretty frail. I mean, think about
it. Since I retired, I've doubled the amount of training I'm doing.
There you go. I'm saying, but they've discovered a couple of supplements, and now they've done individual studies on these supplements. They found pretty good results. Like vitamin D, a couple others. HMB is usually mentioned. In fact, I just actually, for the first time in years, you know what HMB is? HMB is a metabolite of the branched chain amino acid leucine, and I tried it when it first came out. It was, they were hyping it like crazy about, the next big muscle building thing. I tried it and it did absolutely nothing. And then later studies showed that it worked better for beginners than it does for people with experience. And it was very expensive, so I stopped using it immediately. I haven't used it in 25 years, but there's some recent studies that show that it actually does help you keep muscle as you age. And since I'm losing some muscle myself, I actually just today bought some HMB. I'm going to try it and see if it works. It probably won't work, but
well, let me know.
Right, but this particular article, what this study did is it took about 4 or 5 of these supplements touted to help you keep muscle, and they gave it all of them together instead of individually. They wanted to see if you give them all together, if it actually helps you keep muscle. Mm-hmm. And I go into the details of exactly how these supplements work. And also what the study showed was taking these supplements significantly helped men over 40. And the age of the men in the study, by the way, was 72. I mean, that's an age when you're losing tremendous amounts of muscle. And using this combination of supplements actually halted the amount of muscle loss. It kind of it gave you it set it back like a year. In other words, it prevented a year's worth of muscle loss just by using these supplements for a couple of weeks. So I talk about, then I talk about, I mean, you're familiar, I'm sure, with black market steroids and, black market.
You never know what you're going to get with that stuff. Yeah.
Well, we go back, Richard, at a time when, if a bodybuilder wanted to use steroids, it was never easy to get steroids from a doctor because most physicians don't really know that much about steroids. But the point is, at least years ago, you could be pretty sure of what you were buying, that it was the real stuff. Yeah. Unfortunately, with all the restrictions in recent years on steroids, they're a Schedule III drugs.
That's what killed it. Yeah.
Doctors forget about it. They will not give out steroids for, to a healthy young guy or even an older guy. I mean, they fight to give testosterone to men that are deficient in testosterone. Can you imagine if somebody walks in and says, I need a prescription for Deca-Durab? They're going to get out of my office. They're not even going to deal with it. So, what people have to do with these athletes or anybody who wants steroids, they turn to the black market. And I've talked about the anabolic steroid situation, but there's usually not much discussed about growth hormone. So this article is in the Applied Metabolics. I go into depth about black market growth hormone drugs. I talk about the sites that sell them. I talk about whether they're real or not. I talk about what to look for, and I'll give you a little hint. It's not a rosy picture. Let's put it that way. In other words, after the research I did personally, I would not even think of buying growth hormone on the black market. But anyone who reads this article, and I also talk about why use growth hormone in the first place. In other words, I have a whole section in the article about the myths and misconceptions. A lot of people put too much, they have all these ideas. Have you ever heard the one about, one of my favorite one, you can eat as much food as you want while you're taking growth hormone. You can take in 15,000 calories and not get.
It has to be ripped. Yeah.
Yeah, and still be ripped. That's one of my favorites. And I talk about all these myths, whether growth hormones is super anabolic that a lot of people attribute. And I talk about what growth hormone actually does, because it does have some extremely beneficial effects, but they're limited to what I talk about in the article. So that's the last article. The newsletter is over 50 pages. So it's a good amount of reading. It's a lot of and there's as usual ad-free, no bullshit. It's all facts, as you know. I don't try and sell anybody anything. And the rare times I do have to mention a product, I always point out that I am not, associated with this product. I'm not getting any profits off this product. I don't push anything. All I'm trying to do is give people solid, evidence-based information that's the truth, that they could count on, and also that it's practical. As I said earlier, I'm not trying to impress anyone about how smart I am or the extent of my knowledge. I'm trying to, when I come up with the ideas of these articles, the first thing I ask myself is, will this article affect a good enough number of people to make it worthwhile? In other words, do people want to know this information? Is it practical? Can they use it?
Well, Jerry, that sounds like a full Applied Metabolics newsletter again. And I appreciate it every month. You keep broadening your scope too. You've had other things for women in some of your other newsletters too. So the scope of what you cover in physiology and nutrition is just amazing. And I like the fact that you also include not only stuff for beginners, but even stuff for older guys, and things, how we can still work out without hurting ourselves and taking care of our joints. So I'm glad I subscribe to your newsletter, and you will too, listener. We're glad to have you again this month. See you next month when we talk about Jerry's October issue of AppliedMetabolics.com. Don't miss it.
If you want the latest in exercise and nutrition science, then sign up for Jerry Brainum's Applied Metabolics newsletter.